All right. Are you listening? Title is Are You Listening? Let's turn to Matthew chapter 13, starting in verse 18. I know Lee touched on this story last Sabbath, and he talked about the seeds. I'm going to talk about the hearers, the ground. Hear you therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and understands it not, then comes the wicked one and catches away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that hears the word and anon with joy receives it. Yet has he not root in himself, but endures for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, by and by he is offended. You see this a lot today. He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that hears the word, and the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. But he that receives seed into the good ground is he that hears the word and understands it, which also bears fruit and brings forth some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Story about an excited little boy was telling his dad about something that had happened to him that day, and his dad said, "Slow up, honey. You are talking too fast." The boy shot back at him, "Oh no, Dad, I'm not talking too fast. You're just listening too slow." Are you listening? It's been said that we think 4 or 5 times faster than we talk. This means that if a speaker talks at 120 words a minute, the audience is thinking at about 500 words a minute. I suppose I need to talk a lot faster, or you need to listen slower. Otherwise, I'll put you all asleep. In James chapter 1, verse 19, my dear brothers, take notice of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. The story is told that when Napoleon was making plans to invade England, he was told that an American wanted to see him. He said, "I can give him 2 minutes." Napoleon said, and then the 2 minutes was not long enough to understand the revolutionary idea of a ship propelled by steam. Had Napoleon listened to Robert Fulton, the history of the world might have been altered. Are you listening? It pays to listen to the right person at the right time for the right length of time. After Yeshua was transfigured on the mountain, Yahweh said in Matthew 17, verse 5, while he yet spoke, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And behold, a voice out of the cloud. And it said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear you him. Story of an 80-year-old grandfather went to his daughter's house for dinner. When the meal was over, he announced that he was going to take a walk through the neighborhood. I'll be back in 20 minutes. 2 hours later, he returned and said, sorry I'm late. He said, but I stopped to talk at with an old friend, and he just wouldn't stop listening. Sometimes it pays to listen in a very long time, especially when it comes to listening to Yahweh's in His Word. We should never stop listening to the Word of Yahweh. It pays big dividends to listen to Yahweh and Yeshua and learn from him, whether through a sermon or through your own personal reading of Yahweh's word. In our text about the parable of the sower, Yeshua speaks of 4 different kinds of hearers or listeners: the hard-hearted, the shallow-hearted, the clutter-hearted, and the good-hearted listener. Now, the hard-hearted listener, in Matthew 13:19, when anyone hears the word of the kingdom and understands it not, then comes the wicked one and catches away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which receives seed by the wayside. The hard-hearted listener is hardened to the gospel because they can't seem to understand it or grasp it. Satan snatches any little bit of that sown in that person's heart, and before it can start to grow and bear fruit, it's gone. At one point during the game, a baseball coach said to one of the young players, "Do you understand what cooperation is? What a team is?" The little boy nodded yes. "Do you understand what matters is whether we win together as a team?" The little boy nodded yes. So the coach continued, "While a strike is called or you're out at first, you don't argue or cuss or attack the umpire. Do you understand that?" Again, the little boy nodded. "Good," said the coach. "Now go over there and explain that to your mother." There are some things that some people just don't seem to understand in life. However, understanding all about baseball is not nearly as important as understanding the basics or the essentials of the gospel. 3 boys were talking about their father. One of them said, "My father's a great professor. And when he's talking about a subject, only 10 people in the world can understand him." The second boy said, "My father's a great brain surgeon. And when he's talking, only 5 people in the world can understand him." The third boy said, "My father's a preacher. And when he's preaching, nobody can understand what he's saying." Colossians 4, verse 3. "Withal, praying also for us, that Yahweh would open unto us a door of utterance, to speak the mysteries of Messiah, for which I am also in bonds, that I may make it manifest as I ought to speak." In order to keep Satan from stealing what has been sown in people's hearts and minds, we must make the message of Yeshua Messiah as clear as possible. Then we have the shallow-hearted listener. Matthew 13, verse 20. "But he that receives the seed into stony places, the same is he that hears the word, and anon with joy receives it. Yet has he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, by and by he's offended." You make fun of people. They make fun of people. "You believe in God? What's that? You're crazy. You don't believe in evolution? What's the matter with you?" The shallow-hearted listener doesn't have any staying power. They are quick to believe, they receive and rejoice, but they don't stay with the program or with the person, Yeshua Messiah. The story about a Hakio was a Japanese dog who used to accompany his master to the railroad station each morning and then greet him back in the evening at the station. One night in 1925, the man did not return, having died in another city. Although the little dog had met his master for only a few months previous, for the 10 years afterwards, the dog went to the station every night and sadly trotted home again after waiting for an hour. The faithfulness of Hakio impressed the nation so much that the government erected a statue of the dog on the spot where he had previously waited. It's a shame that we humans are not as faithful or enduring as some dogs. But it's true. I've known a number of people who started jogging or an exercise program. Me too. It seems so beneficial. But after only a short time, they quit. Why? The excitement wore off. The going got tough. We experienced sore muscles and leg aches or whatever. And what people have done with various sports, they've also done with jobs. And they've also done with Yeshua and his church. Why don't they stick with it? Is it their fault or ours? Part of the fault could be ours. It all depends on how much we help new convicts, how much we love them and support them. That's it. Nothing special. That's the one key to a survival of all believers. We must love them, and even in their failures, we must support them, encourage them, help them, and pray for them. And they should get it here in our group. 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 14. Now we exhort you, brethren, warn them that are unruly, comfort the feeble-minded, support the weak, be patient towards all men. Romans 14:1. Him that is weak in the faith, receive you, but not to doubtful disputations. Romans 15, verse 1. When we then, that are strong, ought to bear the infirmities of the weak, not to please ourselves. Let every one of us please his neighbor for his good to edification. I've heard it said that believers are the only people who shoot the wounded. I wouldn't say that always holds true, but it does a part of the time. In other words, when someone fails or sins, what do we do? Do we shoot them or do we try to save them? Do we criticize and condemn them or do we try to help cure their problems? I realize that you can't help some people because they don't want to be helped. I've seen those kinds of people in churches, and generally after a period of time they will drop out. We've seen a lot of people come and go. It seems like no one can help them but Elohim alone. Consequently, some will not remain faithful. When the going gets tough, they get going in the wrong direction. Whether they find life tough or believers' life tough, they just drop out. Such is the shallow-hearted listener. Then we have the clutter-hearted listener. Matthew 13, verse 22. He also that receives seed among the thorns is he that hears the word, and the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. The clutter-hearted listener has cluttered up his life with the things of this world. Some people are caught up in the world of entertainment, which keeps them from being captured by the Lord. Did you know Americans gave about $2.9 billion to overseas missions. Sounds pretty good until you hear the rest of the story. Americans also gave $8.4 billion to see movies, $13 billion to buy chocolate, $23 billion to buy toys, $23 billion to buy stuff for their pets, $24 billion for jewelry, $58 billion for soft drinks, $85 billion for lawn and garden care, and $354 billion to eat out at restaurants. Does this sound Americans are interested in Yahweh and Yeshua? I'm not trying to point fingers at us. I'm pointing the fingers at Americans. The vast majority of Americans are not interested in Yahweh. They are interested in anything and everything else. They have no spiritual priorities. The vast majority of people in America may talk a bit about Christianity, but they don't practice it. Ask an average person what they are interested in and see what they say. They don't talk about Yahweh and Yeshua. They talk about sports, movies, food, hobbies, cars, whatever. This is the problem in affluent America. We have everything. We do everything or want to do everything, and consequently, Yahweh and Yeshua are left out of the picture of our lives. American lives are cluttered with things, and we have no room for Yahweh and Yeshua. Then we have the good-hearted listener. Matthew 13, verse 23. But he that receives seed into the good ground is he that hears the word and understands it. That shows you how much you and I are different from everyone else. I understand it. I see it. So do you. He that understands it, which also bears fruit and brings forth some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Some are better than others. Some are natural, some struggle with it. The good-hearted listener hears the word. He understands it, and he bears fruit. It's been said that the gauge of a good sermon is when a person leaves church not saying, "What a good sermon," but when he leaves church, he thinks to himself, "I will do something. I'll tell somebody. Share it, what you know. Even if you're just talking to the wall." That's a good-hearted listener. James chapter 1, verse 22. But be you doers of the word, and not just hearers of the word, deceiving your own selves. Be you doers of the word. James 1, verse 23. For if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholds himself and goes his way, and straightway forgets what manner of man he was. But whoso looks into the perfect law of liberty, and continues therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. The good-hearted listener sees himself in the mirror of Yahweh's word and doesn't like what he sees. Consequently, he does something to change that image. You are standing out from the crowd Because you used to be in the crowd, you're standing out now. You saw Yahweh's word, you reflected your image, and you realized you have to change. People don't like you no more. People make fun of you now. Good-hearted listener sees himself in the mirror of Yahweh's word and doesn't like what he sees. So he changes something of that image. He believes and obeys the word of Yahweh. He allows Yahweh's word to bear fruit in his life. The good-hearted listener listens, understands, and bears fruit. Now, Yeshua said in Revelation 3 verse 20, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in to him and will sup with him and he with me." Are you listening? Yeshua is knocking on the door of your heart. He's knocking in many ways and by means of many people. Do you hear him? Are you listening? He's not saying, let's do lunch. He's saying, let's do life together. Are you listening? Yahweh bless.